It's 3:40 a.m. in the Taiwan Strait. Suddenly, hundreds of missiles launch from mainland China. Across Taiwan, radar stations light up. Ballistic missiles race towards air bases, ports, and military command centers. Within minutes, the largest military confrontation in the Pacific since World War II has begun, and the world is watching. If China launched a full invasion of Taiwan, the United States could be drawn into the largest naval battle of the modern era. Hundreds of ships, thousands of aircraft, missile strikes stretching across thousands of miles of ocean. But defending Taiwan presents an enormous challenge. The island sits just 80 miles, about 130 kilometers from mainland China. Close enough for aircrafts, close enough for missiles, and close enough for one of the most dangerous invasion attempts in modern history, which raises a critical question. If China invades Taiwan, could the United States actually stop it? To understand the challenge, we need to look at the battlefield. Taiwan sits at the center of what military planners call the first island chain. This chain stretches from Japan, through Taiwan, and down toward the Philippines. For decades, these islands have acted as a natural barrier, limiting China's access to the wider Pacific Ocean, but Taiwan sits at the most critical point. If China seized the land, it could break open the entire chain and push its navy directly into the Pacific. That would dramatically shift the balance of power in Asia. But geography alone does not decide wars. Military capability does. And if a conflict begins here, it will likely start with a devastating first strike. Most analysts believe an invasion of Taiwan would begin with a massive missile barrage. China possesses thousands of ballistic and cruise missiles capable of striking targets across the region. DF-21D and DF-26 are designed to hit ships, bases, and military infrastructure. In the opening hours of a conflict, these missiles would likely target Taiwanese air bases, radar installations, command centers, military infrastructure. The objective would be simple: cripple Taiwan's defenses before the invasion even begins. At the same time, Chinese naval forces would begin moving towards the Taiwan Strait. Amphibious ships carrying troops and armored vehicles would prepare to cross the narrow stretch of water. But there is a problem. Launching missiles is one thing. Successfully landing an invasion force is something very different. If the United States chose to intervene, the response could begin almost immediately. American strategy would rely on three main components: aircraft carriers. Aircraft carriers such as the Nimitz class and Gerald R. Ford class would act as floating air bases in the Pacific. Each carrier can launch dozens of aircraft hundreds of miles from the ship itself. But operating these carriers close to China carries serious risks. China has developed long-range anti-ship missiles designed specifically to destroy large naval vessels, which means American carriers could become prime targets. Air power. American bases in Japan and Guam host advanced aircrafts, such as the F-22 Raptor and F-35 Lightning II. These fighters are designed to operate in heavily contested airspace, exactly the kind of battlefield Taiwan would become. Regional allies. Japan could also play a major role. Aircraft, such as the F-15J and F-35A, could support air operations from bases in southern Japan. Together, these forces would form a network of air and naval power stretching across the western Pacific. But even that may not be enough, because stopping an invasion fleet requires one of the most lethal weapons in modern naval warfare: submarines. The Taiwan Strait could quickly become one of the most dangerous naval battlefields on Earth. America attacked submarines, including the Virginia-class submarine, would likely play a decisive role. Operating silently beneath the surface, these submarines could track Chinese warships escorting invasion fleets. Their primary targets would be amphibious transport ships. These ships carry the troops and armored vehicles needed to capture territory. Destroy enough of them, and the invasion could collapse before it ever reaches Taiwan shores. At the same time, long-range bombers such as the B-1B Lancer and B-52 Stratofortress could launch cruise missiles against the Chinese naval formations. Carrier-based aircraft would strike from above. But there is another battle that could determine the outcome of the war: control of the skies. Modern wars are often decided in the air, but gaining control of the skies over Taiwan would be far from easy. Fighter jets, such as the F-22 Raptor and F-35 Lightning II, would attempt to intercept Chinese aircraft approaching the island. Meanwhile, Chinese fighters like the J-20 would attempt to challenge American aircraft. The skies above the Taiwan Strait could quickly become one of the most contested airspaces on Earth, filled with stealth fighters, long-range missiles, electronic warfare systems, advanced radar networks. Whichever side gains air superiority gains a major advantage over the battlefield below. But even if China manages to land troops, the war would be far from over. Taiwan's geography heavily favors the defender. The island is dominated by steep mountains running down its center. This limits the number of routes invading forces can use to move inland. Taiwan has invested heavily in mobile anti-ship missiles, such as the Chongfeng 3. These missiles are designed to strike enemy ships approaching the island. Defensive strategy focuses on mobile missile systems, coastal defenses, hardened infrastructure, and dispersed military units. But there is another challenge facing the invading army: logistics. In modern warfare, supply lines determine whether an army advances or collapses. If Chinese forces cannot continuously resupply their troops across the Taiwan Strait, even a successful landing could quickly stall. Time could become the most critical factor in a Taiwan conflict. China would likely attempt to achieve its objectives quickly, before outside forces can fully mobilize. Because the longer war lasts, the more reinforcements the United States and its allies can bring to the region. Additional aircraft, ships, and troops could arrive from Japan, South Korea, Guam, and even the continental United States, which means the opening days of the conflict could determine the outcome of the entire war. Despite all these plans and capabilities, defending Taiwan would be extremely difficult. China would be fighting close to its own territory, giving it major advantages in logistics and reinforcement. The United States, by contrast, would be operating thousands of miles from its mainland, and the conflict would not be limited to ships and aircraft. Cyber attacks, electronic warfare, long-range missile strikes, all could target communications, satellites, and command systems from the very beginning. In other words, the battlefield would be incredibly complex and incredibly dangerous. Despite rising tensions, a full-scale war over Taiwan has not occurred. One reason is deterrence. Both China and the United States understand that such a conflict would carry enormous risks. Another factor is the global economy. Taiwan produces a large share of the world's advanced semiconductor chips. A war over the island could disrupt global supply chains in ways that affect nearly every country on Earth. For now, Taiwan remains one of the most sensitive geopolitical flashpoints in the world. But if a war ever begins, the opening hours could reshape the balance of power in the Pacific.